Okay, go ahead and flip the page, page 133. You need your whiteboard out and a pencil close to you. And on the heading on page 133, it says practice multiplying with decimals. And then the directions say find each product. And then numbers 9 through 23, previewing it, it starts us off with some smaller numbers, and then it jumps over to some more maybe difficult problems to do. Wow. Well, I'm going to walk you through one in which I'm going to relate it back to money and relate it back to how we solved with the money situations in the previous lesson. And then we're going to talk about what are the rules or steps that we're going to take in order to solve problems that involve decimals. So let's take a look at let's do number 11 together. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to follow along with me on your whiteboard. So I'm going to be doing it over here. Whatever I'm doing, you're doing on your whiteboard. And so for number 11, we have 500ths times 9. And I'm going to relate this 500ths to money and say, let's pretend like we're multiplying 500ths of a dollar or 5 cents times 9. And then we're going to find out what the product is using the steps that we used in the previous lesson, okay? So what we did in the previous lesson is we took the dollar form amount and we just put it into cent form or into word form, basically. So we said 5 cents in dollar form is written out like this. Do you have that on your whiteboard? It could also be written out like this, 5 cents, or with like a cent sign. So 5 cents, write that out below it, times 9. 5 cents times 9, or 5 times 9. Go ahead and write that out again with me. 5 times 9 is equal to, what's 5 times 9, everyone? It's 45. Okay, so 5 cents times 9, does it equal 45? So for example, let's say we're purchasing, what could we do? What could cost 5 cents? Pencil erasers. Let's say you're buying 9 pencil erasers and they cost 5 cents each. And then you bring it up to the cashier. What is your total amount going to be if the pencil erasers cost 5 cents each and you're buying 9? Would it cost $45? I hope not. And if you accepted that as your answer, you would be losing out on a lot of money for yourself there. So this is incorrect, but we're going to make it correct. Remember, what we did is we took our place value charts. Oops, I don't have mine out. Hold on. Okay, do you have your place value chart? What we did in those previous problems, remember, we put our cent form back into, this is equal to 45 cents. And then we're going to put it back into dollar form. And how we put it back into dollar form is we put the last digit in the hundredths place value and then filled in the rest. So for 45, our last digit is 5, and 5 is going to go in the hundredths spot, followed by the 4. And then since we have no other digits, we're still going to put a 0 in the 1 spot to hold its place value. And in dollar form, 45 cents looks like this. $0.045 or 45 hundredths. Okay. So we could say our answer then for 5 hundredths times 9 is equal to 45 hundredths. That's the answer. And what steps are we going to use now to follow, for example, when we get to these really big digits? Well, what we did for 5 hundredths is we turned it basically into a whole number. What we did is we ignored the decimal and any other zeros that we don't need to pay attention to. So we basically ignored this 0, we ignored the decimal, we ignored this 0. And then we turned it into 5. And then we multiplied by the other factor, which was a whole number. So 5 times 9, we said it's 45. But then to turn our answer 45, there was one last step to do. We put it back into our place values. But instead of doing that for other problems, what we could do is remember the rule that or the pattern that we've been looking at. However many decimal places are in our factors, the same amount of decimal places are in our answer. So what I'd like you to do in your book is let's count out how many decimal places are there in 500ths. I underline each digit that comes after the decimal or to the right of the decimal. So I underline that 0 and that 5. I want you to do that as well. So there's 2 decimal places in this factor. 9 is a whole number, so there's no digits after the decimal. Where the decimal falls for 9 ones is after that. There's no digits in decimal form for 9 in the decimal places for 9 ones. So for both factors, we always have to count both factors. There's 2 decimal places. So on the side, what I'd like you to do is draw out a small little 2. And then we're going to count how many decimal places are going to be on our answer. So we already know we already came up with 4,500, but we're going to still underline 1, 2. So the 4 and the 5 are decimal places, 1 and 2 place values after the decimal. So I'm going to put a little 2 there to represent 2 decimal places in our factors, 2 decimal places in our product, 4,500s. Let's go back and let's do the same process for number 9. 8/10 times 6. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to ignore the decimal and look at 8/10 as if it's just a whole number. Turning 8/10 into a whole number, it would just be 8 ones. And what's 8 times 6, everyone? It's 48. So let's put 48 in our product. Is that our answer though? It's not. We're going to have another step to do. All right. The next step is we're going to go back and count how many decimal places are there in our factors. Well, there's only one decimal number here and it's 8/10. How many decimal places are there in 8/10? 1. And I'm going to underline that 1 place value that comes after the decimal. I'm going to put a little 1 over here so I keep track of that. If there's 1 decimal place for our factors, how many decimal places are there going to be in our product? 1. Okay, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to start with our digit all the way to the right. We're going to underline it. And then we're going to put a decimal in front of the number we just underlined. And now we have our answer of 4 and 8/10. 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place. 1 and 1. Shall we do it for another one? Let's skip on over. Let's do number 15. Number 15 is 7/10 times 333. The book is trying to trick us on over here. So let's rewrite this problem much more clear on our whiteboard. We're going to rewrite it, our multiplication sentence, putting the bigger number on top. So we're going to rewrite it. Remember, with multiplication problems, it doesn't matter the order. We'll still get the same answer. I'm going to put, let's put 333 at the top times 7/10. Does your whiteboard look like mine? Great. First step is we're going to ignore the decimal and we're going to look at our decimal number as if it's a whole number. So in my head, I'm ignoring the 0. I'm ignoring the decimal. I'm looking at 7/10 as if it were 7. Okay, and we're going to multiply this out, and we're going to be solving what's 333 times 7, basically. Okay, I'm going to use the shortcut method, of course, to do it. It's the fastest way to do it. I encourage you to do that. But if you are still not comfortable with the shortcut way, solve it in whatever way makes best sense for you. What's 333 times 7? 7 times 3 is 21. 7 times 3 is 21 plus 2 is 23. And 7 times 3 is 21 plus 2 is 23. So we get our answer of 2,331. Is that our complete final product though? It is not. That's 333 times 7. Our problem is 333 times 7 tenths. So our next step that we're going to do to solve is we're going to count the amount of decimal places there are in our factors. Well, our decimal number of 7 tenths, let's underline the one digit that comes after the decimal. How many decimal places is that? 1. So our answer has to have how many decimal places? 1. We're going to start all the way to the right, our last digit here, and we're going to underline just the first digit to the right. So that 1, and our 1 spot is actually going to be in our 10th spot because we're going to add in the decimal then in front of that, in front of the digit, and that will leave us again with 1 decimal place in our product. 233 and 1/10. 1 decimal place, 1 decimal place. And let's transfer that answer into our book number 15, 233 and 1/10. Okay, let's do one last one together. I'm looking down at our third row. I see lots of digits in this one. Our book kind of throws us into a 3-digit number times a 2-digit number. Let's do one of these problems. Doesn't necessarily mean it's harder, but it will take maybe a little longer to solve. No problem. Let's do I'm looking at 21. Let's do number 21 together. Please write 3 and 25 hundredths times 25 on your whiteboard, just like I'm doing. Nice and neat. I'm spacing out all my digits because I'm already previewing it. I'm going to be using the shortcut method to solve. Okay, does your whiteboard look like mine? Step number 1 is we're going to ignore the decimal in this problem, and we're going to solve as if we are multiplying 2 whole numbers by itself or by each other. So we have, instead of 3 and 25 hundredths, ignore that decimal in your head, ignore it for now, and I want you to be solving what's 325 times 25. I'm going to solve using the shortcut method. Whatever method works best for you, you're going to solve. Shortcut is what I recommend, though. It's the fastest way to solve these. I'll start you off. We're going to be multiplying 325 on the first row by 5, and then we'll be solving 325 times 20 for the second row for our second partial product. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 5 plus 2 is 12. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 1 is 16. I hope that you're able to follow along closely at that pace with me. I'm crossing out the 1 and the 2. We don't need that anymore. Now for our next partial product, we're going to be solving what's 325 times 20. We're going to put a 0 in our 1's place since 20 ends in a 0. And then we're going to be multiplying out 325 times 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 2 plus 1 is 5. And then go ahead and continue on. Okay, did you get 1,125? Great job. Is that our final product though? It is not. That's our product if we were to be multiplying 325 times 25. The problem is though, it's 3 and 25 hundredths times 25. So our next step is we're going to be counting those number of decimal places. In 3 and 25 hundredths, there's 1, 2. Go ahead and underline it with me. And let's put a little 2 on the side. 2 decimal places in our factors. How many decimal places in our product then? 2. And again, we're going to start on the right and we're going to be underlining just 2 digits then and then placing a decimal before the last digit that we underline is. So let's start with the 5. Underline for 1 decimal place value. 2 decimal place values, and then a decimal goes into our product then before the digit 2 in between the 1 and the 2. to give us our final product of 81 and 25 hundredths. 2 decimal place values, 2 decimal place values. Great, thanks so much for following along. Let's actually put that into our book. 81 and 25 hundredths. Okay, my challenge to you is completing the rest of the problems on the page.